All right. So, hi, Casey. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you so much for spending literally New Year's Day with me as we talk about 2024 and mindset and just kind of the plans that we're making for ourselves. So, thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, I'm happy to be here. I almost slept through midnight last night. Like, I'm at that age now where when I stay home, it's like touch and go. So I was
Mm.
very much looking forward to our conversation. I got my beauty sleep.
That's amazing. I thought you were going to say that you almost slept through your calendar alarm or something for
No,
this
I
because
was like ready today.
That's awesome. We went out last night for the first time in a while, I feel like, for New Year's, and it was really fun. I also am happy that I don't go out like that as much anymore because I definitely felt it this morning.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. We've been like fighting germs. So it
Mm.
was a nice excuse to stay home, but it was very quiet New Year. And I think we'll get into why. And I think it was exactly what we needed.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that things work out in that way a lot of the times. Like, I mean, we recently caught up and we talked about how things don't go according to plan, but then, like, as the plan keeps going and it evolves and adjusts, that it feels like we are where we need to be when things
Yeah, that's
turn out
right.
the way that they do. So,
Yeah.
kind of using that as our segue then, what are you doing at the beginning of the year? Like, are you a resolutions person? Are you a goals with a map? Are you a word? Kind of where do you start?
Yeah, well, I think it's such a fun time to answer that because I've always been a strategic plan person. So, like in the fourth quarter every year, I would usually sit down with like a preliminary set of goals in October and I would noodle on them from like October through like mid November. And then in the week of Thanksgiving, I decide on them and move into like almost editorial calendaring my life for the next year. And not
Mhm.
necessarily from a content perspective. Like I'm not putting out like social media posts plans but what I am doing is thinking about, okay, here's what I want to have accomplished at the end of Q1. Here again, looking quarterly at what I wanted to get done and then zooming out and looking at how all those quarterly goals led to whatever the big goals were. And so I've always been a huge fan of resolutions and intentions and words and new habits and new morning routines. And then 2023 happened. And I think for a lot of people, like the pandemic was really formative. And I don't want to skirt past that because it certainly was in my life. But really 2023 was the year of recognizing I love the illusion of control and it's an illusion. And
I was gonna say, I like how you
2023,
said illusion there.
yeah, it's very intentional. In 2023, everything in my life really showed me that the only things I have control over are right here within me. And so this year I'm going into 2024 really excited about not having a strategic plan and having some loose goals, like some health goals, some financial goals, like some loose household goals. I'm a newlywed, and my husband and I like to do some goal setting together and accountability things throughout the year that we're going to continue. But really, 2024 for me is going to be a year of really focusing on mind, body, spirit right here. What do I need? And am I listening to what I need as the year progresses?
Mhm. That's incredible, and I think that as I've asked more people, I feel like this is the first year I've ever really set, like, goals with, like, roadmaps and milestones for me, and I think as I've talked to more people about it, it's been more and maybe it's always been like this, I don't know, but, like, being I guess not early in my career anymore, but, like, kind of mid-career, I think, at this point, a lot of goals that I feel like were previously set were always very career centric. And I mean, we do work, like everyone works a majority of your awake hours. But it's been really cool that as I've had more of these conversations, a lot of the goal setting or maybe like focuses have been away from your career, away from your
Mhm.
work, because I think that we're seeing that this whole work life balance that we're all pursuing really starts with us. And
Mhm.
kind of like what you said, like focusing on what you can control and like that starts like right here within this like body bag of skin and organs and whatnot.
I mean, yeah, and the thing is, I think it resonates with you especially because you do have a business that you own. But when, 2023 was the year of me leaving corporate America, I didn't leave. I was almost pushed out with no notice and starting my own something. And that makes that work life balance even harder
Mhm,
because now you're like, for me, my company was born out of my office in my house, right? It wasn't something where I even physically had to leave some days to go to work. I would just go into a different room. And so I think making sure that I'm recognizing I love what I do and I give and give and give, but I can't keep giving to the point of depletion. Like there's got to be a better balance there. And to your point, like there's so much life to live
mhm.
that I'm really hoping in 2024 I can get back to really living on my terms again.
Yeah. I love how much of a conversation that has been, like, not only on, like, social, but just in person with people. People have been talking about, like, how they can live their lives more for themselves and prioritizing these different things. I love that you mentioned your husband. I love saying that, your husband. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
That the
And to
2
you.
Thank you, thank you, thank
Yeah.
you. But I love that you were saying the 2 of you work on your goals together. What is that like, especially as, like, you are in this new chapter of life, um, planning your life with somebody and working on goals together?
Yeah, it's a whole new level of trust and accountability. I'm not somebody who ever really built with anyone. Like single mom at a very young age, did a lot of things on my own. And yeah, that's not to say I didn't have support. I mean, my parents have always been hugely helpful. I've had a small set of people in my corner that have really helped. But I mean, when it came to getting crap done, it was me hauling stuff on my back, getting it done, right? Hankering down. And so when we got, well, it goes long before when we got married, but especially when we got married, we recalibrated and really when we first started dating, we had the same conversation like this our relationship for us doesn't work if we're not communicating and we're not comprehending. Like it
Mhm,
really comes down to those two things for us. And so as we started thinking about, we were dating for like 4.5 years before we got married. And as we started thinking about what we wanted to accomplish or where we wanted to go, it was like, hey, we can keep loosely talking about this, or we could, set some hard steps and actually start realizing it. And I
mhm,
think for my husband, he was a professional athlete and lived a very, very transient lifestyle, right? Like he was on planes and international flights and always going overseas to play. And I think when we started dating, especially because I was a single mom, I forcibly grounded him here in
mhm,
some ways because I couldn't just hop a flight when I felt like it. And so by being able to have those conversations and bring him into my world and teach him here's why I set goals. Like I couldn't take trips if I didn't have the money or the time off work. So
mhm,
here's how I plan for that. That allowed for a greater level of comprehension. And so now I would tell you, like, he gets more excited about our planning and quarterly meetings than I do. I'm always like, oh, we got to get into all this crap. We got to figure it out. But we've been really realistic and like, here are our individual goals, each of us, and here are our couple goals. And for us, it works really well to have that separated. But I also recognize like there's a million ways that people can do this. It really is knowing your person and how they
mhm.
tick and how y'all can yin and yang together and what's right for your family. Like I feel bad sometimes talking about it because I recognize it works really well for us. It may not work for other people. And so I really would like to be mindful of like this is what works really well for us in this season. Don't
Mhm.
know if we'll do it forever, but again, like right now dude gets as excited as I do about a new notebook and a planning meeting. So I'm like, well, this isn't all bad.
Yeah, no, that's super fun, and I think that when there's enthusiasm, it makes it feel like you're doing it together rather than like a chore or something that you're forcing someone to do with you, so
Oh
that's
yeah.
amazing. What does that look like? Because I feel like, as friends start to tap into each other for accountability and, like, I mean, all manner of relationships, whether it's romantic or platonic or it's a newer relationship, but you want to start that foundation, what does accountability look like between the 2 of you? Because I think that oftentimes, depending on like the relationship, sometimes it feels like you're nagging or it feels like you don't want to be too soft, but then if they don't achieve their goals, it's like, well, should I like what was my commitment in saying that I would help hold you accountable?
Oh my gosh, we just had that conversation because I am really sensitive about how I like to be held accountable by my husband, and my husband is not always the softest. Right, like sometimes he just doesn't get
Yeah.
that I'm sensitive about stuff. And so again, it goes back to us like really clear boundaries. Like he asked me verbatim, how do you want me to, so it was, we were talking about shopping. Like we love to shop, we love to buy stuff. Like we just enjoy going and getting things. And then we looked at our bank account. We were like, we have got to find ways to put some parameters around this, right? Like we want to buy a house, we want to travel more, we want to probably eventually change our cars up. Like there are some
Mhm.
things we want to do. And so he said, how do you want me to hold you accountable when it comes to your finances? Because the way that we've split our finances are they're separated. We have one shared account, but everything is separate. And he said, how do I support you on this without coming across as controlling on this?
Mm,
And I thought that was just such a great question for him to ask. And to be honest, like I don't necessarily have the answer. I said, I think in that moment, I think I ended up saying like, ask me if I'd rather have that or a house,
yeah,
and figure out if that's a good benchmark for me, and then let's see how it goes. But for us, it's very much like a revolving door of communication. And
yeah,
and especially because I mean, I guess one of the things I should layer into this for people who don't know me or know about my journey, having launched my own business last year and having it had so much growth. I mean, it
mhm,
wasn't that it just launched and did well. Like it launched and it exceeded my expectations in 6 months, and
yeah,
it exceeded a lot of just I guess just my expectations is what I'm trying to say, but to the point that I'm even looking at hiring this month or this quarter. And so, um, even having conversations about like, where does our household conversations stop and start when it comes to the business?
mm,
Because while everything is in my name, we do spend a lot of time talking about Polished, and I toss ideas off of him. And so for us, like that communication piece will forever be a revolving door, but that was almost like a pillar of our dating relationship. Like if you can't have open communication and we can't achieve comprehension, this won't work for either of us.
yeah. No, that's a really great point, and I think at the end of the day, communication ends up being a lot of I almost wanna say, like, the solution for many things or the foundation as you plan something out, so I think that's incredible, and I also appreciate that you preface with, like, "This is what works for us right now." That doesn't mean it's always gonna work for us in the same way that
Mhm.
you're like, "Well, for now, ask me if I'd rather have that or a house," because that
Yeah.
also brings, like, kind of that end game back into play for you.
Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
and who knows, right? Like at some
Mhm.
point, we like nice things. At some point, I might say, "Hey, we're going to Aruba." He'll say, "Do you want Aruba or house?" And I will say, "Aruba," every time, Aruba. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's all subject to change, but as long as it feels healthy, and I think that's the key too. Like, if you don't trust the person you're asking to hold you accountable, it can't work. There
Right.
has to be trust there so that you recognize that I know this, who, no matter who your accountability person is, they're coming at you with the right intentions and motivations, and you can take a little bit of tough love from them.
Yeah. No, that's a really great point. I think that's great advice as people are kind of putting together these accountability groups, something to keep in mind. Like, who are you bringing into that circle?
Yeah.
And is it somebody that you can, one, like, stand or like receive that accountability from? And do you trust them? Do you trust that they'll be
Mhm.
looking out for you in the best way that they can or
Yeah.
not? And so that's really key, I think, as you think about who you are looping in during this, I would say, very formative time of the year because you
Yeah,
are,
I
like,
would too.
mapping, so
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
awesome, and I'm so happy that you both have been able to do that, and sounds like you're gonna continue doing that for many, many years, so
Yeah,
that's amazing. Um,
yeah.
that's awesome. So, as we kind of you started talking about polish, which is amazing, and so proud of you for everything that you've accomplished, and I know you
Thank
are
you.
very kind and humble, and you will talk about all the people that helped you make it possible. At the end of the day, though, Casey, you busted your ass. You made shit happen, and I hope that you've gotten to enjoy some of that and recognize all of your hard work paying off. So, I hope
Thank
that
you.
you did some of that, but
Thank you.
as you are in Q1 now of being a business owner and a new year, how have you looked at your goal setting with a new business? Because it's harder, I think, to have some of those benchmark pieces. You can't say like, well, this is what we did last year when you have 6 months to look at. And
Yeah.
again, you've kind of had this explosive start. So, how are you managing some of your own expectations and the goals that you're setting with that?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about polished is I almost did it backwards than I think I would have done it had I been more cognizant of what I was doing in real time. Like, I didn't know I was starting a business. I thought I was picking up some consulting work until I figured out what I wanted to do after I lost my job, right? Like that was pretty much it. And I thought to myself, and I think I wrote it down in one of my journals, like if I'm going to keep doing this after the end of the year, I wanted to get through the end of the year, then
Mhm,
here's the revenue amount I need to be at to pay my portion of the bills, right?
mhm,
And we hit that polished hit that really organically. And I thought, okay, so there's something here. And I kept saying, whether it was in like our conversation or when I was talking with like Leslie Bailey or talking to my husband or talking to Linky with the Minority Business Review, I would keep saying like, I think I can do it. And people would kind of look at me like, yeah, you are, like funny story. Like, I think you can because you are.
right,
And so I think all that to say, I haven't set a lot of goals with polished because I said to myself when this started, let me give myself 6 months and
mhm,
see what happens. And now I think I've learned enough to say, let me give myself the first year. Let me get my first year under the belt and
mhm,
really see where the energy has landed, what industries even like people will ask who's your target audience. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not there yet. And I'm intentionally not there yet because
mhm,
I want to see what lands before I start making those strategic decisions about where to scale. And I think what benefited me in the midst of all this is I technically Polished was born on June 22nd, 2023.
mhm,
I participated in an MBA level executive strategy program through certification program through IU Kelly with support of Mid States Minority Supplier Development Council. And I did that in, I think it was October. And so the ability to have this strategic reset in the middle of the first 6 months of business operations was fantastic, but I had no business doing that yet because I didn't have enough under my belt to be able to really be intentional with where I was being strategic. And so I actually have held all of those materials to do myself again
mhm,
in June of 2024 because I think by that point I will have a better understanding of capacities, workflows, efficiencies, automations, all of the business back end pieces that I've had to learn on the fly. And fortunately, Indiana has a fantastic ecosystem for small businesses. So
mhm,
that information is more readily accessible here than it is in other states.
right,
Now, finding it matters. Like you have to know
mhm,
where to look for it.
mhm,
There's also, I will say, Indiana does a fantastic job with XBEs. So that's women, minority, veteran, disabled business owners.
mhm,
Um, so there have been a lot of resources, but really my goals for Polished for this year are stay steady.
mhm,
Stay steady through June and then go through the strategic exercise again and reevaluate.
yeah,
And I think for me, that's a really scary place to be because
mhm,
I typically am like, strategic plan, part A, part B, part C. I have all these contingencies, everything's buttoned up. I really like that. I like the process of going through and developing a strategic framework. And so keeping myself from doing that feels like, okay, but I should be doing more. But at the end of the day, right now, we have a great set of clients with
mhm,
work that I really give a damn about. And I'm really excited to let these next 6 months play out and then decide where we want to take a bigger bite next.
yeah. I think that's incredible, and I don't think it's an easy feat to enter a year, especially being someone who is so strategic in such an open-minded way. Um, So I'm sitting here trying to like I said, this is the first year I've ever done it, and I didn't not plan before, but I feel like I always had, like, some idea of what I was hoping for, and so now that I'm entering, like, year 3 of business, I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know if I could do that, like, again, and so I feel like in the same way, you are making a huge turn to do that, but I think it also allows you a lot of grace as you are figuring out what this business really looks like and how you can be more intentional once you see like what it can do. What has that mindset been like? Because I know you are a very intentional person anyway. So that's not to say that these next 6 months aren't going to be intentional. It's just going to look a little different than what it has in the past with your strategic plan in place. So, how are you balancing that then with this more open ended like realm of possibilities while also making sure that you're not saying yes to everything or
Mhm.
saying no to the wrong things
Mhm.
and whatnot?
Yeah. Well, so 60% of the business hours from June, well, let's just call it July. It was June 22nd, but July through December, 60% of my time went to pro bono work.
Mm, okay.
60% of my time went back into the community. Whew, that's a lot of time.
It is.
And how fortunate am I to be able
Mhm,
to have the clients that I have, the space that I have to be able to take care of the revenue side and still commit that time to the community. I mean, what a blessing. But I
mhm,
think this year rather, what's going to look different is that piece of it, is being a little bit more intentional about where my time, talents, and treasures are. And the reason I say that is because going back to the top of this conversation, like I'm going to turn my focus internally. That
mhm,
means focusing on my health and wellness. That means focusing on my recreation and
mhm,
my quality of life and enjoyment of life. But that also means internally on the business, because I have a couple of things that I've always dreamt of doing. Like, for instance, I've always wanted to write a book.
mhm,
And my son, my, that's a whole nother story, but my son always says, write a book about your story. Not a lot of single moms get a master's degree and have the career you've had. And while I appreciate that, our journey is a shared journey. And
mhm,
I don't know that that's it, but I've always wanted to write an industry book on marketing and public relations, and really looking at maybe even advancing some of the research in the field about our industries. And so I think I hope it's my intention that by protecting some of my time, I'm able to reinvest that time into things that are more strategic for me, which may be having a consistent gym time,
mhm,
which may be having a consistent afternoon walk, right? And freeing up some brain space, which may be having dedicated time where I'm thinking about strategy, but not business strategy. I'm just thinking about like what I enjoy doing, how I could evolve, polish to do more of the things that I love. And so it is hard because all of that right now is very theoretical and super hypothetical. But I think one of the things that I realized through the midst of this huge transition that happened in like a 2 week span,
mhm,
I learned really quickly that again, like the illusion of control, the false sense of stability. Like at any given moment, anything can change. Shame
mhm,
on me for not realizing that and retaining that lesson during the pandemic. And so, by giving myself space to really think about other things I could be doing, other pieces of work that fuel my fire that maybe aren't just in the marketing, public relations, communication spaces. Who knows what that could open the door to? And that's not to say I can't be strategic about it, but first I have to allow myself to think differently.
mhm. Yeah. And that's I think I'm in the 18-28 cohort right now, and we're working on a project, and the rubric is one of those open rubrics. And so it's similar in the sense that like we are all very high performing young professionals. We want to like exceed expectations, but there's no expectations really set. And so it's really forcing us to be in this position to think differently because we're like working on a topic we have never been a part of or anything like that. And it's exciting to have that space. I also think that there's this level of, I mean, it's the uncertainty part of it, you
Yeah.
know? And I think it's and I'm very much in awe every time I hear you talk about your strategy, even when you're giving yourself this like so much space to explore what that strategy will look like you said, hypothetically down the road or after the next 6 months. And I think that that's not easy. I also think that especially as business owners, investing in your quality of life and your own well-being, it doesn't feel like you're investing in the business or like your goals directly, but it has such a big impact on on everything that you do. Like you said earlier, like you went to bed, you got your sleep because you were excited about this. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't necessarily, like it doesn't feel like it directly correlates, but it really does. And the way that we take care of ourselves outside of like our work hours has such an impact. How do you think how do you think people will prioritize themselves more in 2024? And I feel like this is a little bit of a
Yeah.
sidestep from like what we've been talking about, but I do think that like health and wellness are so important. And like this is, I think the last 4 months, I've really prioritized my own health and wellness just because I was feeling so exhausted and I was really starting to lose like the passion I had for the things that I was doing. And I was like,
Mhm.
is it that I don't have a passion for this anymore, or is it that I just don't have anything left to give right now, and so I'm not able to put my all into it or, like, even have, like, the cup for it to fill me in the way that it has in the past. So what do you think 2024 will be like as this conversation has been more top of mind in a lot of spaces and as you've started to prioritize it for yourself?
Yeah. In 2023, I read a book, and I might butcher it. I believe it was called What Happened to You. It's by Dr. Bruce, I think it's Bruce Jerry, and it was co-written by Oprah.
Okay.
And I'm like, if you follow me on Goodreads, I'm a rom-com or murder mystery reader. Like, I'm not usually reading a biography or a self-help book, maybe every once in a while. But I am so not into deep reads. Like, I want to know who done it and who they done it with, right?
Yeah.
Um, but this book talked a lot. It's about trauma, and I read it because someone that I really appreciate in life recommended it to me and said it's a really good book to read when you're parenting, before you're parenting teenagers. And at this point, I was already well into parenting a teenager, but I thought, what the heck, we'll give it a shot.
Mhm.
And the whole book is about, again, trauma response and healing. And the biggest takeaway for me didn't come until closer to the end of the book. And I intentionally read this book slowly.
Mm.
I'm a speed reader. I think I read maybe 15 minutes a night for a couple of days, which is slow for me. I usually whip through books pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I sat with what I was reading. And my biggest takeaway was around communities' inability to heal holistically as societies or as states or as regions or whatever, as hoods, our inability to heal together because we've lost the notion of the community and we
Uh,
no longer protect the community. And so one of the things that I would like to hope comes out of 2024 is this recognition of the fact that you can do all of the wellness work on your journey. I can do all the wellness work on my journey. That's good and great, but how much stronger and more connected would we be if we could come alongside each other during these journeys,
mm.
right? And
Yeah.
that's why places like Maven Space and the Startup Ladies and Create Connect Collab and I mean Boss Babe Network and more, like that's why all of these places are so important to me because it's women that are having the opportunity to truly partner alongside other women on their journey. And that crosses over health and wellness and spirituality and mental health and work-life balance, right? Like it has the potential to be so much greater than what it is. And yet it all starts with the same thing of just standing next to each other and asking, how are you? And
Mhm.
starting to cultivate that relationship. And I think my hope is that, you know, we're seeing that more in the Black community in Indianapolis. We're seeing that more in the Hispanic community in Indianapolis. And my hope is that we continue as an Indianapolis community, as a central Indiana community, rather, um, to start having a greater sense of and pride in community. Um, for me, it's gonna be little things next year, and it's starting like with calendar invitations, so that I know that I'm blocking my workouts on my calendar, right? Like,
Mhm.
or like I said, taking those afternoon walks. And so I
Yeah.
think for me, it's gonna be all about intentionality
Mhm.
and planning ahead because I'll never have the right shoes on to go take an afternoon walk, and I'll never have workout gear in my trunk unless I pack it the night before. But I think those are some of the little things that um, I'm really looking forward to. Even like cooking at home. I
Yeah.
don't like to cook. My husband does all the cooking, but we are going to do some cooking together and try to create some experiences out of some of the changes we want to see.
That's amazing, and I think there's something so special about like adding more. I don't wanna say value, but it really is. It's adding more value in your own mind to different things that you do, like cooking with your husband. Like, that is quality time, and that's something that you don't normally do, and
Yeah.
when I wanted to start prioritizing more of what I was doing with my physical body, I started, like, scheduling more walking meetings, and so then I started keeping shoes at my desk or in my car or something. I did one walking meeting that I forgot about in heels, and that was the worst. It was, like, 80
Right.
degrees out, and I was like, "This I have blisters, like, I am
Yeah.
in the wrong place." But it's I really do think, and we talk about, like, mindset shifting, but it's also, like, looking at, like, what you already have going on and how you can tweak it in a way so that it works for you in a slightly different way, like the walking
Yeah.
desk and, like, all those different things, and,
Yeah.
um
Well, and I think you made this point a bit ago, but just double tapping on it. I mean, it's really important to that not overcommitting piece of it. And for
Mhm.
the last 6 months, I mean, part of starting this business that I didn't really know I was starting until it had started was I said yes to everything. And when
Mhm.
I looked back even at the end of the year and started looking at month by month, I could see exactly when I started overcommitting. And I could see exactly how many weeks I was counting down to get to rest. And so like what checks and balances do I need to put in place personally so that I'm not overcommitting? I'll tell you next year for Polished, we're going to do 10 hours of pro bono work a quarter because that's all that I can do right now as one
Yeah,
person and until I get the team grown and scaled a bit. And so um I'm calling it in my household like taking a beat this year before I say yes to things. I'm going to try and take a beat. So if you see me out, ask me to do something and if I don't say, "Hey, that sounds really cool. Let me think about it." Slap my wrist, like, just give me a nice little, like, "Hey, you didn't take a beat." Because I really would like to work on taking a beat and not overcommitting.
yeah. No, that's great, and thank you for the very direct way to hold you accountable. I
Yeah.
appreciate that communication as well. That's
Yeah.
awesome. No, this is amazing, and I'm so excited to see you just more in 2024 and to see you lay these boundaries and make time for yourself in a way that, like, helps you achieve the goals that you are kind of loosely outlining for yourself. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. And how can we keep up with you? How can we learn more about Polish? I know we're going to dive a little bit more into the lessons from 2023 and our dig deeper interview, but if we want to follow you, see what you're doing, how can we do that?
Yeah, follow along for sure. So Polished Comms, COMMS is the website, is the social media. We're on, well, Facebook, Instagram. Instagram's really the biggest one. I would go to Instagram and LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And then you can follow along with me if you want to. It's Casey, my first name N, and then my maiden last name Cawthon, Cawthon. Yeah, plug in. I also would maybe put a ask out too. Like I am constantly, just because of the connections that I have, I'm constantly looking for really cool stories and really cool people. I know a lot of people that are always looking for people, just people are looking for talent, right?
Mhm.
People who are really damn good at what they do. And so if you're a super talented person or have a really cool skill set, I'd love to connect with you. Drop me a line, we'll grab a coffee or maybe do a virtual coffee. We'll see. And yeah, I'd love to stay just in the loop with people, stay connected to indie and really stay connected to the individuals who are doing things in indie. I think we have a really cool creative economy here in central Indiana. And yet, because everybody's so busy, all too often, some of the really impactful people doing the really measurable work are falling through the cracks a bit. And I love to help tell those stories.
And you're very good at it. So
Thank you.
thank you for all that you do and all the spaces you save for people. So we will chat more as we dig deeper. And if you're interested in hearing about some lessons that Casey has learned and how that has shaped 2024 and what there is to come, head over to our Patreon where you can save a seat with us. And let's talk more on Monday. Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.